Hey, Photography Mafia! Do you find yourself uncertain on the best way to mask an image? Well, in this video tutorial, we'll take a deeper look at ON1 Photo RAW's masking tool, and soon, you're going to up your photo editing game. Let's get started. We'll start with the basics and look at the masking brush first. If you're already familiar with this, you can skip ahead. You can take a look at the description below where the timestamp is located, and then you can see the other chapters in this tutorial. Anyways, this photo, I took it in Sumatra in Indonesia in Gunung Lusir National Park. I may have butchered the name. What's interesting is there's a Netflix documentary narrated by Barack Obama, so I highly recommend taking a look at that in case you do want to visit Sumatra in the future, or maybe you already have and just want to have some nostalgia. Anyway, so with this photo, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make it quick. I'm going to click on Brilliance AI, let ON1 Photo RAW do most of the editing, regardless of if it's oversaturated or overblown. That's okay because we're working on masking. We'll take a look at the local tab here and see what it added. So it added some Brilliance AI to the flora and some Brilliance AI to the sky, which is kind of strange, but that's fine because there's only a little bit of sky and it's overblown. Now what I want to do is, you can see the face of this Thomas leaf monkey. It's a little bit dark, or it's underexposed. So I'm going to click on the local tab, which I'm already at actually. And then I'm going to click on add adjustment. So now I have this mask open, which is here as well. And the masking brush is already selected. So it's selected right here. It's highlighted with the blue icon. And then I'm just going to decrease the size. We can change the size by pressing the left or right bracket key as well. And I think I want to keep the feather at 100. The feather is the smoothness or the hardness of the edges. So it controls the transition of the brush. Opacity at 100, and I'll keep it at paint. And then there's also this perfect brush, which we'll take a look at later on. So anyways, I'm going to start brushing over this guy right here. Just a little bit. Like that. I think that's good. And mainly, I'm more worried about the shadowy area. And maybe I can get a little bit of his hand here. And here. And this part of the feet. Just a little bit. Let's take a look. Let's take a look at the brush. I'll just click on this brush icon here, which is also here. Or this is the masking icon, I should say. And I missed this part right here. I can also change to the red overlay while brushing, like that, or I can change to the grayscale right here. So I'll just go back to the red overlay or the red overlay while brushing. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to reset this exposure. It's at -1. So I'll just put that back at 0. I'll just double click on that. And now I will increase the shadows. Let's take a look at this. So I think that looks a little bit better. And let me see the blacks. I think the blacks are fine enough. And I'll put in some contrast. Okay, so let's take a look at this Thomas leaf monkey without the masking brush and with the masking brush. So that looks a lot better. You can definitely notice some noise or some lack of sharpness. That's something you guys will be able to do. One thing that I would do probably is add a little bit more vignette to this image. So I'll just go to add adjustment. Actually, no, it's not the add adjustment. It's in the effects panel. So I will remove this and I'll go to the effects panel, click on add filter, and then I'll go to vignette here. And let's take a look at this vignette. So I will decrease the brightness and I think that looks good. One other thing you can probably do is take away these highlights with the masking brush. Let's do some monochrome selected color with this photo. So I'll go to the develop tab. I'll just let Brilliance AI do a little bit of the work. Then I'll go to the effects tab, click on add filter, click on black and white. So it's a very dull or washed out black and white filter. So I'll move down to the tone. I'll make the shadows darker, give it a deeper look. And maybe the blacks. a little bit darker. And then what I can do is I can click on add filter again, and I can go to the vignette. Let's vignette the corners. And I'm going to go back to the black and white actually. And let me bust up the contrast here just a little bit. And I think I'll just keep it at that for now. I can put a little bit more detail into this. Let's see what's at the toner. No, I don't like that. So now what I want to do is I want to get this door here. So what I can do is I can click on the black and white filter right here. Click on the mask. Right now it's showing everything. And I have the masking brush already selected. And it looks like it automatically selected the perfect eraser brush, or the perfect brush right here. I'll just close this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in here. And I'm zooming in by pressing Option or Alt, holding the keyboard shortcut Option or Alt, and then scrolling in with my mouse. By the way, actually, I'm going to deselect this because I have a better way of selecting this. And I'm going to keep the feather at 0. And I'm going to increase the size of this brush until it's a little bit smaller than this door. But I don't want to get these edges here. So I'll just keep it like this. I think that looks good. And I'll paint that. And I'll paint that. Like this, like this, like this. Now I'm going to make this brush smaller. And I'm going to select the perfect brush. And the perfect brush, it detects the edges. And when you're brushing, you want to brush where you see this minus sign in the middle. Sometimes it'll be a plus sign if I click on the paint, but it'll be erase here. So it's a minus sign. So I want to make sure the minus sign doesn't go out of bounds of this door. And then I just want to paint over it like this. So I can just do that like that. And then it'll automatically detect the edges like that. Doesn't need to be perfect, as long as you guys have an idea of how this works and how you can use it in your workflow. And remember, if the edges are too hard or too soft, you can always play around with this feather, but I'll just leave it like that. And that looks good. Now I'm just going to zoom out here. So now this door looks good. So what I want to do is actually select another filter. I'll go to add filter. And I'm going to click on the color adjustment. So I got this color adjustment filter selected. Now I'm going to go to the black and white mask. I'm going to right click on it. And there should be a copy mask. Nope, there's no copy mask. Let me make sure I have it selected. Now there's copy mask. So now I have it copied. Now I go back to this color adjustment, double click right here to create a mask, right click on it and paste the mask. And right now it's showing the black, this part being masked away. So I'm going to click on this to invert the mask. So now we'll see where it's creating the mask. So I have this selected now. So I'll just close this. Now going back to the color adjustment, I will hide the mask. Now going back to the color adjustment, what I can do is go to the blue channel right here, or the blue range, and I can increase the saturation. And I can change the hue if I want, just give it a different color. And what I can also do is I can create another filter. Actually, I already have this mask selected or saved. So I'll go to the local tab. I'll click on add adjustment, and then I'll right click on this and then paste mask. And this time I will inverse it again right here. And I will reset this exposure. Now what I can do is add a little bit of structure to this door. It doesn't look like it does much. So what I'm going to do is let's just darken the shadows a little bit. And let's see if I can go to the detail here. Actually, I don't like that. I'll undo that. Put a little bit of contrast. I just want to put a little bit more harsher look to this door. So I think the contrast did a good job here. Let's see. So I think I like that for now. And now you guys know how the perfect brush works. Let's take a look at the before and after with the perfect brush. And actually, there's one other thing I'm going to show you. There's another way to select the door. And what I can do is I can reset all of this. And then to select the door, I can also use super select right here. So I click here and then I just click that, and that saves a lot of time. And then I can, let's say, add an adjustment of, let's say, color balance. And then I can put the shadows to teal, no, actually orange, and the highlights to teal, something like that. And then I can change the balance, but that's how the super select works. Let's put a little bit more focus on this part of the image here, the door, the design, and the crack. So what I'm going to do is create a local adjustment. I'll click on add adjustment. And now I want to select or mask this part. So there's a few ways to do this. One way is by clicking here and using the line mask tool, which is right here. And I'm going to paint on it. So what I need to do is I need to select an area. So the way I can do that is I can click right here. And then I'm going to draw a line or create the shape of my mask like that, like that, like that. Whoops, I missed this part. So I'll go like that. And then I'll go like that. And one other thing is I can also move these corners around. And if this wasn't like a linear or a rectangle, I can also go to the sides here and change the curve if I want. So I can change it there. And there's a point right here. I can change it, but I'll just leave it as straight right now. And once I have this outline or selection selected, there's a paint bucket tool that you can see. And so I'm going to select that, and it's going to select this area. And then I'm going to click OK. So now it has this mask selected. Let me reset the exposure. And now I'm going to add some contrast to this image. I am going to reduce the whites a little, reduce the highlights. I think like that. And maybe sharpen or maybe darken the shadows like that. Let's see how it looks. I am doing some counterintuitive stuff with the tonal range, but that's okay. And then I'll go to saturation like that. And then I'll go to vibrance. So this looks a little bit better, and I'm going to add some structure too. And that looks good. So let's take a look at the before and after. Here's the before and here's the after. And another way I can select this mask, or let's say I want to darken this area a little bit more, what I can do is I can create another adjustment. Actually, yeah, I can create another adjustment, and I can go to the mask here. And instead of selecting this line tool, I can go to quick mask brush. And with this tool, I need to erase an area and keep an area. So I want to paint this away. So I don't want this area of the mask. So I'm going to click right here. And then I'm going to shift click here to make this line. So the red part is where the area I don't want. And like that. And like that, and so forth. I don't need to have it perfect, but that's fine. And then I'm going to go to keep. I'll keep all this. Shift click here. Shift click. Let's see here. Shift click here. Actually, I do want to keep this area because of this little crack right here of this screen. So I'm going to click here. I'm going to click here, click a little bit of the handle like this. And once I do that, I need to click on this down arrow sign for it to process. And that looks good. And I'll click this accept button right here. And now you can see it automatically reduced the exposure by -1. What I'm going to actually do is change it to, let's say, 0.3 minus 0.35. Reduce the highlights like that. reduce the midtones, reduce the shadows. That's too much. I think this looks a little bit better. So you can see what I'm doing. So if I want to darken this more, or another option is I can blur this if I want, just to put a little bit more focus. Of course, the best thing to do is maybe crop the image, but I just want to show you how some of these masking tools work. Let's correct the sky of this image I took in Iceland. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the local tab, click on add adjustment, and then I'm going to select mask AI here, and then I'm going to select sky so you can see the blue overlay, and I'm going to click on apply here. And now that I have it selected, it's already at -1 for the minus for the exposure. So I think that looks fine. I can decrease the highlights. If I decrease it too much, I notice a little bit of artifacting going here, right here along the mountains. So sometimes these mask AI, they don't do a very good job with the selection. So you can see right here. So what I can do is I can turn on the mask right here. I can also turn it on here. I can right click here and then I can show mask, or I can also choose the overlays, which are right here and right here. So anyways, I'm going to increase the feather just to make this transition a little bit smoother. And I'll deactivate the mask, and I think it looks a little bit better now. So let's see the before and let's see the after. That looks good. Let's make this image prettier with the gradient filters. So this photo I took in the Galapagos Islands. It's a waved albatross. And from my understanding, the waved albatross, they mate for life unless one of the partners passes away. Anyways, don't take my word from it. That's just what I remember. But what I'm first going to do is I'm going to focus in on the waved albatross right here. So I'm going to go to the local adjustments, click on add adjustment. And then I'm going to select the gradient mask right here. So where is it? No, that's not it. Right here, this icon right here. And then I'm going to select none for the preset. The gradient, I'll select center. And I'm going to draw a circle in front of this by clicking on it. And then dragging these edges. And then rotating this icon or this circle here. And then I can click and hold the bigger circle to move this around. I will increase this. And you can see the outer circle of this mask is the feather or the transition, and the inner one is the size. And actually, I need to make it a little bit smaller, the oval shape, so I will do that. And now I'll pull this in. Now I'll bring it up a little bit more. That looks good. And one thing that I do notice is this mask is inversed. If I click right here, so I need to click on this icon here to inverse it. That looks good. I will hide the mask, and now I'll increase the exposure just like that to 0.8. I think I'll keep it at, or maybe 0.75. Okay, that's fine. And I'll add a little bit of contrast to 18, add a little bit of structure, and then add a little bit of saturation, add a little bit of vibrance. Let's say 30, 27, that looks good. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and be a little bit more creative with the sky. So I'm going to add another local adjustment. So I got this here. I'm going to select the gradient tool. This time I'm going to go to the shape and I'll just select gradient. And I'm going to make sure I have this selected. Okay, there it is. And I'm going to try and select the sky like that. And this is inversed again. So I can either click on the inverse button here, or I can click this and rotate it like that. Now I'm going to reset the exposure to 0. And what I think I'm going to do is increase or move the temperature to the right. Just give it that nice yellow look, that warm tone. And then I can move this around like that or like that. And that looks good. So I'll just click on this hand tool here. And then just to make this image a little bit better, what I can do is I can go to the effects panel, add a filter, and of course add the vignette, which is sometimes boring for some people. That's okay. And here's the before, and there's the after using the radial and linear gradients. Let's blur the background of this image with some masking. So first I'm going to add some Brilliance AI here. Let ON1 Photo RAW do all the work. It did an okay job, but I'm going to reduce the amount to about that. That looks okay. So now I'll go to the effects tab. I'll click on add filter. And then I'm going to go click on blur. So I got the blur selected, or the blur filter. I'm going to double click here to create a mask. And then I'm going to create a depth mask by clicking this sign right here, or this symbol, this downwards arrow. So I'll click on that. And now you can see the mask has been created, but it's inverse. So I'm going to click on the inverse button here to inverse it. Now what I need to do is I need to move around this mask. So the best way to do it is by changing or turning on the overlay. And then I'm going to select the black and white or the grayscale overlay. So I got that selected now. So now I need to level this up. So the way I do that is start by mapping the blacks and the whites. So I'm going to map in the blacks. Actually, I'm going to map in the whites. So you got to play with this like this. I always get confused with the midtone section right here. But anyways, I'm moving the blacks to the blackest points, or the shadows to the darkest points, and then the whites to the whitest points. Eventually, I should be able to get this wheelbarrow here, like that. And then go like this. So it would be better if I can make this window bigger. It makes it a little bit harder like that. I think that looks good. Let me turn this off. So great. So this blur mask, or this depth mask, did a pretty good job of selecting the background, but you can see the masking or the blurring is too much. So what I'm going to do is decrease the amount here. Let's say I'll just go to 1, and then I'll gradually go up until I like it like that. Or I can try some of these styles like normal, radial. Nope, I don't like any of them. So I'll just stick with normal and use Gaussian blur. And let's say I want to keep it at 5. Actually 9. 9 or 7. I'm just looking at this tree right here, see how that looks. But anyways, that's how the depth mask works. So here's the before and here's the after. Let's saturate this body of water. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add some Brilliance AI. That looks good. And now I want to add some local adjustments to this body of water. So I'll go to the local tab. I'll click on add adjustment. And now I'm going to use the color range here. So now if we look at the mask, it's selecting right here. But I'm going to click on the eyedropper tool, or the color picker tool, and click right here. And hopefully that selects it. It didn't look like it did. So let me reduce the color range. So this is kind of like the feather, or the transition, or the area that it samples for the color range. That looks good. And you can notice it's also selecting a little bit of the trees here. So one thing we can do is we can move around the levels tool like that. Just bring it in like this. See if we can start mapping and squeezing everything in. Or another thing we can do is have the brush selected and click on erase. And then we can increase the brush size and just start painting some of this away. These are different options to adjust the mask. But anyways, I'll leave it like that. I'll turn this off. Now I have this selected. I'll increase the exposure a little bit. And then I'll go to the saturation and just increase the saturation, increase the vibrance, and voila. So let's see it without the local adjustment. and with the local adjustment. So that's how the color range mask works. As you've already seen, there's different ways to target or mask the sky, but another way is using the luminosity mask. So what I'm going to do is, since the foreground is green, I'm going to use and colorize the highlights with a little bit of magenta, which is the complement of green. So I'm going to do that by adding a filter, and then I'm going to add the curves filter, and then I'm going to click here to activate the mask, and then I'm going to click on the light bulb to create a luminosity mask. So the mask has been created. I'll activate or view the mask right here. So this is a black and white or grayscale mask, and then I'm going to start mapping it in with the levels slider here, just to make the blacks blacker of the mask and the whites whiter of the mask, just like that. And now I'm targeting more of the sky and a little bit of the highlights or the sun rays here that are beaming down. So I'll close this, I will hide the mask, and I'll go to the green channel of the curve tool and just decrease the magenta, or decrease the green and bring in a little bit of magenta, just to make it have a slight nostalgic or like a film-like look. So let's see the before and after. So that's pretty much it using the luminosity mask. I'm going to show you a cool text layer effect using a little bit of masking on this photo I took in Costa Rica. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create or activate the text layer. And here's some lorem ipsum dummy text. I'm going to erase that, and I'm going to type in, let's see here, Costa Rica. Okay, and I'm just going to click on this so I can make this box bigger. And just like that. And then I'm going to align it to the middle. And I'm going to increase the size just like that. And that looks pretty good. Just going to bring it over the sun. I'm just clicking, holding, and dragging. Now I'm going to go to the blending. Go to the blend mode, and I'm going to, no, not the blending, the color range, and select mid-tone here and increase the range a little bit like that. Let's take a look at shadows. I think shadows might be better. Yeah, shadows is a little bit better. Let's take a look at the range, and that looks pretty cool. It's a different type of mask that blends in with the bottom layer. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to mask a little bit of the text using the gradient filter or the gradient mask. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the masking tool here, make sure this is activated, and then I'm going to go here, make sure I have gradient mask. I'll set the preset to none, so that looks good. And here is the gradient, and just like that, I'm going to increase the size of this gradient like that, and that looks good. And then I'm going to decrease the density and maybe move this like that. Decrease the density, or maybe increase it. Oh, I'll decrease it. Okay, that looks good. So you can see this transition of the mask going from more transparent to more opaque, plus the blending of the sun with the background. So let me just go to the hand tool, and let's see the before and after. So that pretty much wraps it up for our masking tutorial in ON1 Photo RAW. The one thing I didn't show you is the refined masking brushes. So for example, I'll create a local adjustment and it won't make too much sense. Actually, let me go here and I'll create a local adjustment. And let's say I want to select a brush here. I got this. So I'm just going to paint over here. And this is not really doing anything right now. I'm just going to show you an example. I'll select this red overlay and see, this is the mask I painted in, and I can refine the mask by clicking right here. And then there's these refine mask or refine brush, chisel, and so forth. But I find these tools, they don't work very well. It's like a hit or miss. Like, you guys will have to try it out. And then there's these different options right here. to change the style of the brush when you want to refine it. As I said, it is a little bit like finicky or buggy, so that's why I didn't teach it here, but I'll leave a link to the ON1 Photo RAW description below if you want to check out these further refinement brushes. Anyways, besides that, if you guys enjoyed this tutorial, you know what to do. And as always, live easy, sleep breezy, and stay lovely.